Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to some Azerbaijan Grand Prix race reaction. Yes, and we're joined by Stuart, Chamber F1, in just a few moments' time. I'll, of course, go over the results in just a second as well. How did we find that, chat? It wasn't... having done the watch along, it wasn't an absolute classic. It wasn't a fantastic race. I expected more from Baku, but it was certainly better than China and was way better than Baku 2016. So positives and all that. We'll definitely take that one. And Valtteri Bottas, as you can see on the right there, taking that victory and keeping himself right in this championship hunt as he finally hit form, got some luck on his side as well, and he's showing us that he's going to be right in this scrap all the way to the end of the season. He did take the win, as I said there, 1.5 seconds clear of his teammate Lewis Hamilton. That is Mercedes' fourth consecutive 1-2 victory. Dominant is, I think, the correct word to use there. Sebastian Vettel, once again, the pace. Not really there for Ferrari on a Sunday. He was third, 11.7 seconds off the lead. Verstappen was fourth. I think in the post-race interview seemed to be fairly content with that one, 17.4 off the lead. Charles Leclerc, fifth place from eighth on the grid with all the penalties and whatnot beforehand. Not overly happy, I think it's fair to say, on the in the post-race interviews and whatnot. We'll talk more about Ferrari shortly. Sergio Perez, sixth place. I think very happy with that one. It's done the world of good for Racing Point in the Constructors' Championship. And double points as well for McLaren. Carlos Sainz, bless him, finally finished a Grand Prix. Seventh place for him. Eighth for Lando Norris. He made a late pit stop under VSC. We might discuss that a little bit later. It seemed odd. I mean, I guess worth the gamble from a team perspective, but maybe not from Norris's perspective. Ninth for Lance Stroll, really good recovery for him. 10th place for Kimi Raikkonen. I'm going to say it because it seems to have been forgotten. Pit lane to points for Kimi Raikkonen. Very good performance. Alexander Albon just missing out in 11th place. Antonio Giovinazzi in 12th. Kevin Magnussen was 13th for Haas. They just did not have any pace all weekend, and neither did Renault, really. Nico Hulkenberg 14th, Williams obviously 15th and 16th, and then your retirements list. Pierre Gasly, gutted for him, absolutely gutted. He's made his way up to 6th place. I think he'd run, 35 laps on those tyres. It was looking pretty good for him, but unfortunately a mechanical issue ended his race. Romain Grosjean out as well. Daniel Kvyat also retiring because Daniel Ricciardo reversed into him. Yes. What a moment that was. What a moment that was. But let's say a very good afternoon to Stuart, aka Chainbear F1. How did you find that one, mate? It was not a classic, but we've seen worse, to be fair. Are we working?
Oh God, hang on! I just realised you're talking to me. My computer is muted. 1 second. Still can't hear you.
We'll give Stuart a second. He'll talk to me in just a moment. Technical difficulties. We're having our own Red Bull Honda issues at the moment. Definitely.
Okay.
There we go. We're having our own. Are we working? Are we away? I've got Stuart talking to me now. He's got some issues. I will keep talking. Take some conversation from chat as well. We'll kick off with. We'll get Stuart in a moment. I love what Racers just said. Chainbear was so bored by the race that he fell asleep. I don't know if it was that bad, but yes.
Hi. Sorry about that.
You're all right. These things happen. Was it that boring that you fell asleep?
No, I didn't quite fall asleep. It was definitely. I'm not one to write off a race too quickly. I think some people called this race quite early that it wasn't going to quite live up to the hype that surrounds Baku. And I thought the first third of the race had not a lot was happening, but it had a lot going for it in terms of it was building to a point. It kind of looked like maybe Leclerc was going to position him well, and there was something going on between the Mercedes and the Ferrari once Vettel got his medium tyres on, but it never really came to anything. And, sometimes you get races where you sort of have tension in the beginning and then it all comes together at the end. But this, unfortunately, wasn't one of those races. But there was a lot of action going on. It's just we didn't see all of it.
Yeah, I was saying when I was introducing you that it was, looking at the positives, it was definitely better than Baku 2016, and it was certainly better than China. So, is it one of those we're probably going to go down and look back at and call intriguing rather than exciting? Because there was a lot of question marks over strategy. Some people calling Ferrari strategy into question, which I'm not really sure. I was umming and ahhing during the watch along. We'll get onto them properly in a minute, but I think intriguing is a good word for it.
Yeah, I'll give it that. I spent a good first half of the race wondering how it was all going to pan out and whether what they were doing with Leclerc was going to come to anything. It didn't in the end. And maybe the people with the supercomputers should have realised that. But I guess you can't be too hard on them because Leclerc did crash in qualifying and put himself in an awkward position anyway. But yeah, it could have, it did seem at times that Vettel may be able to turn things around and start bringing things back up towards the Mercedes for like a few laps when he looked really strong on those medium tyres, and Hamilton started to come back at Bottas during the end. But we didn't get the action up front that we were hoping for, but there were times when we weren't sure what we were going to get.
Yeah, four 1-2s in a row now for Mercedes. I think Bottas was pretty flawless today. We got quite tense at one point towards the sharp end. First of all, right back to the start of the Grand Prix, 3-4 corners? The Mercedes boys were side by side, so that was quite heart in mouth. I would hate to have been Toto Wolff in that moment. I'd imagine he was a little bit nervy and that foot would have been twitching, but that was good stuff. And Lewis Hamilton did come back to Bottas towards the end and ended up running wide, I think, on the penultimate lap, which cost him the DRS down the straight, which obviously then meant he was never going to get another chance at it. So there was stuff going on at the front, but I sort of look back, I'm looking at the timesheets now, the official timesheets, and all season so far, we've had a midfield that's been separated by nothing and leaders that have had pretty solid gaps, whereas this time round, the smallest gap on the whole track was between the two Mercedes. Even the midfield was fairly spread out come the end of the race. I mean, there was some interesting points going on in there, but it just... I like the word intriguing because that's what it was, and I don't really know what else to say about it because I don't think it was boring. I know a few in chat saying it was boring. I don't think it was boring. I think China was pretty much there, if you want to call a race boring, but certainly not Baku. Plenty to sort of ponder during the race, and I did the watch along, and I tend to kind of gauge how exciting a race is based on how quickly the watch along flies by. Doing China was hard. I tried not to swear then. It was really, really hard. It just seemed to last about 4 hours. Whereas Baku, I sort of looked at it and went, oh, there's 15 laps to go. So it still went quite quickly because there were these question marks. But back to the original point, I guess, which is what I'm going to make. Valtteri Bottas, faultless pretty much all weekend.
Yeah, and it was what was really good to see, which I think is part of what stymied him in the first half of last year and sort of stopped him from reaching some of his potential. He was aggressive, and he knew Hamilton was coming for him. They were side by side going into the first 2 corners, but he held his nerve. He took as much track as he needed to take without being unfair, and held on to that lead, which I think defined the whole race. I think if Hamilton had got in front, that's where he would have stayed for the rest of the 51 laps. And again, kept his nerve and held his pace at the end when Hamilton was coming towards him. And it was Hamilton in the end who made the mistake, ran wide and lost what might have been just those few tenths of a second he needed to stay in touch and have another go at him. So, yeah, really good for Bottas. He's now taken 2 wins, same as Hamilton, but he's got that fastest lap in hand as well. So he's actually 1 point ahead. Again, I don't think he's showing himself to be quite as consistent as Hamilton. He had that kind of off day in Bahrain, but with being able to carry some of the confidence from these opening 4 races, I think we're going to see something interesting from him for the rest of the year. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, definitely. I like what you say about him being aggressive because Lewis Hamilton said in the pen, I think it was, afterwards, he said that he felt like he was too nice or too kind to Bottas in turn 1. And I watched the onboard with Hamilton, and I think they both were. Bottas could have easily squeezed him on the apex, and Hamilton could have quite easily run him out wide. But there was a lot of respect there, something that we would not have seen in 2016 with Nico Rosberg. That would have been probably contact in turn 1. So a lot of respect between them. And I think Bottas has definitely been more aggressive this year. It's the beard. It's got to be the beard. What's changed in the winter for Valtteri Bottas? He's just turned up and got on with it this year. And I have to say, if I kind of made this point in the watch along, if this is going to be one of those seasons where we have one team dominating, we have to hope as fans that Bottas can continue to deliver what he's delivering now through the whole of this season, because otherwise, and it's nothing against Lewis Hamilton, if he goes off and dominates and wins it by Italy, then he deserves to, because that's what he's gone and done. It's, nothing you do about that. But as fans, we kind of need Bottas to be doing this all season. And that, I think for me, that's the only question mark. I know we're kind of moving away from the race a little bit. My only question mark over Bottas is whether he can carry this on through the year, because he was excellent at the start of last year and luck went against him. And then he kind of fell away. Now, whether that was a psychological thing because things had gone against him, I don't know. I hope, and I think we should all hope, that he's going to be in this right to the end, because I'm trying not to get really downbeat about it. I know I've had a bit of a pants weekend generally, but it's looking at the Drivers' Championship in particular and the Constructors, I can't see... I'm gonna say it. I can't see Vettel and Ferrari getting back into this. I know we've only had 4 races, and I'm going to get absolutely slammed for that, because that's always my argument, Stuart. Oh, you can't say that. It's only been a handful of races. But you look at Lewis Hamilton 2017 and 2018. What mistakes did he make? Can we see him making enough between now and the end of the season?
Well, that is the thing about going up against Hamilton, whether you're his teammate in Bottas or his team rivals in Ferrari, is you've got to count on him to be there every race for the whole season. It's very rare to see a kind of off weekend for Hamilton, and at least definitely rare to see like a number of off weekends. So you really need to be just raking in as many points as possible. So absolutely agree. It's good to have Bottas up there with him, challenging him. I hope he can stay with him. I think what's good what we've seen this weekend, which is kind of similar to what we saw in Australia, and will probably be a bit of confirmation in Bottas's mind, is that he can beat Lewis. He can beat him over a single lap in qualifying, and he can hold it through the race, which I don't think was always the case. And again, you might be able to beat Lewis in qualifying one day, but if he puts the hammer down during the pit stop window, he could undercut you or overcut you with the pace he has been able to have in hand in the past. So what's good to see is that Bottas is able to hold it there. I think, and it's become a bit of a joke that Ferrari put it all on the table in Friday, and then Mercedes say, "Oh, we're really wary of Ferrari. We don't think we've got enough pace here." And then suddenly by Saturday, Sunday, they've turned it all around and look completely unstoppable. This is their fourth 1-2 in a row. But having said that, I think there is something genuine in Mercedes fearing Ferrari, because I think what we saw in winter testing, and I think what we've seen in practice and some of the races, despite their misfortune, is Ferrari do have a lot of pace in their car and probably can unlock something quite significant if they get everything in order, which they really haven't been able to do to the extent that Mercedes can. Mercedes have sort of far and away the best, most organized team on the grid and can really sort of bring the maximum of what they have available. So I think Mercedes are scared, and I think that's maybe part of the reason that Hamilton and Bottas didn't go full Rosberg Hamilton into those corners. I think they still need to know, they're still well aware they need to get as many points as they can while they have this advantage, because, and this might be the optimist in me, but I do see Ferrari sort of swinging it back towards them once they figure out how to do that.
Yeah, it's a 74-point gap in the constructors as well, and it's big. I know it's only been 4 races, but that's a big gap after 4 races, and I'm trying to be optimistic, and I was trying to be after China, and I didn't think, and I don't want anybody, by the way, for a second to think that I'm trying to dump all over Mercedes and how I don't want them to win the championship. I want the best team to win the championship, but from a neutral's perspective, when you want an exciting season, particularly the hype that was built up around it, after pre-season, it was, there are 3 teams in this. Mercedes might be third. Look at where Haas are. Are Alfa Romeo going to be knocking on the door? And then 4 Mercedes 1-2s in a row, and we're all absolutely silenced. But Ferrari, we're going to talk about them because we kind of have to, really. Strategy. I was umming and ahhing through the whole of the watch-along about Leclerc's strategy. Sky were talking afterwards. Their special analysis folk, or whatever, seemed to think that Ferrari left it 5 laps too late with Leclerc. It did feel when watching it as though they were taking him too far. I understand there were the concerns over whether or not the soft tyre was going to get to the end of the race, so I can understand that from that perspective, but they were hemorrhaging time to the Mercedes, and as soon as Bottas got into DRS, that was game over. They were getting free lap time. They were easily going to get past as soon as they got the opportunity, and I can't help but feel that Ferrari should have reacted more quickly, or if they genuinely didn't believe that they were going to be able to get the soft to the end and it wasn't going to work, switching him to a 2-stop. And I know people are going to say that was crazy, but they ended up pitting him in the end anyway to go for fastest lap. So if they felt at that point, and this is all with the benefit of hindsight, of course it is, they're thinking in the moment. They've got seconds to make these decisions sometimes. Well, maybe minutes, to be fair, but they haven't got the time to look back and go, yeah, we should have done that, let's go do that instead, because you can't. It's just impossible. But if they felt like the soft wasn't going to get to the end and the tyres were going off and that was the win gone and the chances of Leclerc getting a podium was gone, then why not just make the stop? And if he needs to stop again, then stop him again, because he did anyway. Does that make sense, or am I just waffling, Stuart? Probably both.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I sort of was making fun of Ferrari a bit during the race. Again, with the benefit of hindsight of watching Leclerc just tumble, losing all of his lead and then some before he took his stop. Having said that, Ferrari aren't idiots, despite the slight calamity they've had this season. And I think what happened was they started off, they stuck Leclerc on the alternate strategy, and that gave him the lead once everybody stopped around him. And I think it's reasonable to assume when you're in Baku that there's probably going to be a safety car at some point. And if that safety car comes in the first sort of 3/5 of the race, that's within his sort of window for being able to take a pit stop and save him that advantage. So you've got that period of time where Leclerc's in the lead and they're sort of like ideally placed to take advantage of a safety car. He may not have come out still in the lead, but he would have like lost or gained a lot of time over everyone else compared to them taking pit stops during normal running. So I think that's how that started. And then over the course of the laps, you're losing time to Mercedes, you're losing time to everyone really. And then it sort of becomes a kind of, you're in no man's land where, if the safety car comes, you gain a bit of time, but not really that much. But you can't take a pit stop too early because then you've just the soft tyres aren't going to take it to the end of the race, and the whole other pit stop's going to cost you another 20 seconds. Kind of like, well, and they didn't really commit either way. And you're right, they sort of ended up just sending him out in 5th place, which gave them the ability to go out and have a crack at the fastest lap, I guess. But I think they were kind of they were. I didn't know there was much they could have done other than committing very early on to a 2-stop. But I think at that point they were still hoping that a safety car will come out and save them, which it didn't.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense. They're playing for the safety car, aren't they? Which does make, you're right, it does make complete sense. But it's one of those things. I think we said this. It might have even been after China with Ferrari and all that over team orders, that maybe it's one of those situations where if the safety car comes out, they look like strategical geniuses, or geniuses. They look incredible. That's what I'm trying to say. Whereas if the safety car doesn't come out, you're sort of questioning why they've done it. But was there something? Because I saw a bit on Twitter. I haven't had a proper look on there yet. Loads of notifications to go through. But in the chat in the watch along, people were talking about maybe they were trying to do what they did with Kimi last year a few times and use Leclerc to back the Mercs into Vettel. Do you think that was something they might have been playing, or is that just too much of a risk and it was more about the safety car?
I did think about this during the race, but I don't think so. Partly because that back, not the back straight, but the main straight is so powerful that I don't think Leclerc could do much to hold people up. But also everyone was quite spread out as well. So, and Vettel wasn't really anywhere near the Mercedes. He couldn't at that point. I think once they'd all caught up to Leclerc, he was about 3 or 4 seconds behind. So it wasn't really enough to kind of make that work. And I mean, they could have done to try and maybe get 1 second advantage out of that situation, but I think it would have been a bit of a risk. But again, I think they got to that position where they were stuck, and Leclerc was going to be 5th, whatever they did. So they may have gone all in and be like, well, let's just sort of use him to see if they gets in the way of the Mercs. But I don't think it would have been a proactive decision to do that. I don't think they would have gone out there from the beginning to be like, I just hold him out there now. But you're right. Yeah, if safety car had come out, they would have looked like heroes. If when Leclerc still had that 12-second gap in the lead, that would have changed. Well, I say that would have changed the whole face of the race. But if he had pitted that early on, what could he have done on his tyres?
Yeah.
Unless he strapped some softs on and tried to build up another pit stop gap. Yeah, very tricky. I think, yeah. I mean, some people pointing out that starting on the mediums was never gonna be advantageous over starting on the softs. So while it looked like he may have been in contention for the lead, and I certainly believed that for a while, maybe that was a bit of a pipe dream. Nonetheless, he started 10th and finished 5th, so he limited quite a lot of the damage he took on Saturday, which was his fault, as he admitted, quite depressingly.
Yeah, that's it. This all comes from his mistake on Saturday. But I said in the qualifying report yesterday, I'm getting some stick for this, and it's ridiculous, really. But I kind of expected this coming into this season with Leclerc getting a Ferrari seat, that people would suddenly accuse everyone of fanboyism and he can do no wrong. It's been a long time since I've seen a driver be that honest about a mistake and say, yep, I messed up, I'm an idiot, I'm stupid, I'm going to go beat myself up. And it's sad that he kind of feels that way, but he's a racing driver and he's made a mistake and he gets that. But I'm not going to slam him and tear him down for one mistake when his 4-time world championship winning teammate has made countless mistakes over the last year and is still considered the number one at the team. So you know, that's not a knock at Seb, but I put it on Twitter earlier, people saying about Leclerc proving he's not number one material for Ferrari because of one mistake. Well, what does that mean about Vettel? What does that mean about Verstappen at Red Bull? You can't, one mistake. If he's doing this every race weekend from now on in, Stuart, then yeah, you know, if we get to Canada or even after Monaco and he's done this every qualifying session, yeah, I'll tear into him because that's not acceptable. But one mistake, probably under pressure because of this. I mean, I don't buy... There's a lot of people talking about... I don't know if you're one of them, Stuart, but a lot of people talking about how Ferrari messed up on Saturday with the tyres they sent him out on, and it's their fault because they sent him out on tyres that weren't switching on. I'm not buying that because Vettel went on the same tyres and didn't put it completely in the wall. He did clip the wall, but he didn't put it completely in the wall. So I'm not buying that. It was his mistake. Possibly under pressure because he was on the mediums. Maybe you could give a little bit of blame in that respect to Ferrari, but I don't know. Do you think he should be criticised more for one mistake?
Oh, I mean, I don't think he deserves to be piled in on. I think, yeah, we all know it was his mistake. Yeah, I don't really buy into, you know, putting the blame on Ferrari for the, you know, the tyres he was on, because once you're on the track, it's your job as the driver to feel them out and know how much you can push them. And he just outbraked himself and went into the wall. I mean, to be honest, I'm amazed over the 4 years we've been going here, we haven't seen more of that, even from the F1 drivers. I know we've seen it a fairly bit from the Formula 2 drivers, but that is a tricky, tight corner into quite a deep braking zone. And as we saw from, you know, Kubica as well, these things can happen. And correct, he was very honest about it. We do normally see a lot of self-preservation from drivers. That wall came out of nowhere type thing. But I hope... I don't because he's been, you know, he was at Sauber last year, so we didn't get to sort of get into his mindset as much as you do when people are in the front running teams. I hope this isn't the kind of thing that knocks him back too much, because we see sometimes with drivers that are in the spotlight, they make a mistake, they have a bad weekend, and they, you know, that sort of echoes through the next few races. And I hope that's not what we see. It didn't seem to affect him today. He had you know, as much as he was able to, a good race today. I think he pushed his car as hard as he could. He didn't seem to be struggling too much. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes in the next couple of races. He's clearly very confident and happy to take it to Vettel, who, as you say, also makes mistakes. Germany last year was a very costly mistake.
It gets forgotten as well. He's young. It's his second season in Formula One. He's gone from F2 to Ferrari in 2 years, and that is a big leap. We are going to talk about Ricciardo in a bit, but just some breaking news. He's been given a 3-place grid drop for being a div and reversing into Daniel Kvyat, but we will talk about that a little bit later. I can't be nice about it. I think I upset a few people in the watch-along because I called him a moron, but I'm sorry, I can't be nice about that. It's a complete brain fade moment. He needs to take responsibility. We'll talk about that in a moment. Very quickly, though, I've got to bring this up. Spain is critical for me. Absolutely critical for this season. From, I guess, a Ferrari perspective and maybe a Red Bull perspective as well, who we will talk about, particularly Gasly in a moment. But it feels critical because Ferrari, this pace they had in Barcelona in pre-season testing, if we get to Spain and they get destroyed by Mercedes, which you would expect anyway because it is very much a Mercedes track, another Mercedes 1-2, that would say to me that this is Bottas versus Hamilton for the championship, because if Ferrari can't deliver that pace on a track where they've previously delivered it and Mercedes can where they haven't, if you're keeping up, then I think we are looking at Bottas Hamilton for the title, because it's the B-spec car you would expect of Ferrari, at least some updates. It's a track they've already proven they've got the speed on. It's a big weekend, huge for them, for the rest of this season and for the championship.
Yeah, I can't help but agree with any of that. This is, in terms of setting up the rest of the season, the next race is going to be really important. And as you say, a really tricky ask for Ferrari, because this is the kind of race that plays into Mercedes' strengths. They've got the good fast corner speed. You know, my initial thoughts is that it's going to be really hard to stop Mercedes next race, but I'm really rubbish at predicting things. So, you know, possibly Ferrari could bring it. Don't forget also that Spain is the classic race for bringing your sort of major first upgrade of the year. So you can see a slight shifting of the balance between teams. But that includes Mercedes. Mercedes will also be bringing a lot of parts and upgrades to the car. So if Ferrari have anything to give, this is going to be the time to do it. And I've been starting to sort of think they've got this kind of loose policy in hand that they're favouring Vettel, but at which point do they have to realise that Leclerc is, basically on a par with Vettel, and if he's leading the way in a weekend, they really need to back him and bank the points if he's going to be the person to get those points. That's going to be an interesting thing to look at ahead, because Ferrari's sort of long-standing tactic of having one main driver may not work out for them this year.
And as a team, they've got to stop making mistakes strategically. Leclerc crashing on Saturday, Vettel spinning in Bahrain. They've got to stop making these mistakes, because Mercedes are clearly showing they're not going to make many, if any, this year. I'm sure they will. I'm sure both drivers and the team will make mistakes at times, but nowhere near like Ferrari have been. They've got to sort that out. But I think it's a massive weekend. A massive weekend in Spain, and I don't want to be too downbeat. I'd like to think that, there are still 17 races to go. So it's not like this is race 16 and it's all over, It's still a long way to go, but we'll see. Red Bull. Verstappen, I think a good race. I think he had a good race. One stops, showed some really good pace on those medium tyres. At times, consistently quicker, set a few fastest laps. Thought he might actually get that one, to be honest, until they pulled Leclerc in. And Mercedes decided to start ramping up the power. But I think the big one really to talk about is Pierre Gasly. Fantastic drive on those tyres to get all the way up to 6th place. What did he do? Best part of 40 laps on the medium tyres from the start. It all looked like he was on for 6th place. Would have put the soft tyres on towards the end. Might have even been able to nail the fastest lap. Just what we wanted to see from Gasly, and then bang, car lets him down. I was gutted for him, because there were two drivers, in my opinion, coming into this weekend that really, maybe three, could have done with some luck, and that is certainly Carlos Sainz, possibly Antonio Giovinazzi, and absolutely Pierre Gasly. And it just, I'm gutted. I don't know what else to say, Stuart. I felt so sorry for him in that moment.
It is hard on him, and it's a weekend like this when this is a thing you need to kind of keep in your physical memory, that he did have a great race and he was doing really well, because on paper it'll say he started 20th and finished like 17th or whatever it was, but actually, yeah, he was having a really great race. He's still not up with Verstappen, but he looked much more comfortable than he has been the last few races. I'm hoping this is the start of him sort of finding his place in that team and getting his stuff together, because, we're very early on in the season and people are already clamoring to shove Kvyat in that car, which I feel like Red Bull aren't going to do this time. I feel they'll probably stick it out and try and get the best out of him. But yeah, it was heartbreaking to see, and I hope he can take it on the chin and go to the next race and just try and deliver it all over again. But yeah. I mean, it would just suck to see him pull up on the side after all of that effort he put in.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the car was running illegally in qualifying, but he did show he's got some pace. That's good, illegally, but he did show he's got some pace. And then at least in the race, he's come out and shown that he can make his way through the field. He can make his tyres work for Red Bull. He can handle that pressure. From a Gasly point of view, Sunday was pretty much faultless. And I don't think he could have done much more. Would have pitted. I can't remember what the gap was. He might have come out behind Perez, but I think he would have got him on the fresher tyres anyway. So I think 6th was what he was on for. And I do feel for him. He could have done with the luck, but these things happen, and I've got to say it. That I can't word it any other way. That cock up in FP2, where he missed the Weybridge, which put him on the back foot with the pit lane start anyway. And then more penalties left, right and centre, meaning he had to start from Georgia. Didn't really help him at all there. And then, of course, he's had to come through the field, therefore pushing his car harder than maybe he would have done if he'd started in that top 6. So is he another one a little bit like Leclerc, who, although it's not his fault the car was unreliable, he has to take some of the blame for his weekend being a bit of a flat one?
Yeah, I mean, they're missing the weighbridge thing. Yeah, some of that definitely rests on him. His team didn't catch it either. If his team had
Yep.
caught it and pushed him back before they touched it, then he would have been fine there. Probably not his fault that the ECU was reset to the wrong values at the wrong time. It's funny, really. He got essentially two pit lane start penalties for things that didn't necessarily have any effect on the results. He was some of the running in FP2, and then he ran illegally in Q1, which he probably would have got through anyway. So, but just very strange. But sometimes having a poor position to start the race from gives you an opportunity to show yourself, which he did. And if he'd been able to finish the race, I'm sure he probably wouldn't have got the official driver of the day, but I'm sure a lot of people would have been arguing for it here today.
Didn't he get 3 pit lane penalties? Because he got the one for the weighbridge, then he got disqualified from qualifying, and then disqualified from qualifying, and then he got the one for the SECU.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Three pit lane penalties.
Yeah, because the qualifying was fuel flow, wasn't it? And then the SECU. Yeah, he did, didn't he? I got that confused with Kubica, who also got 2 penalties. 2 strange penalties. Yeah. Okay. Very strange a weekend for Gasly. I think after 3 penalties, getting 6th place would have been absolutely amazing for him. But so that's a big shame that he wasn't able to take it.
A strange weekend overall. Very, very weird, but we will talk about that briefly a little bit later, just sort of finish off on a lighter note, I guess. But a couple of teams I want to put kind of together, really. Racing Point and McLaren. Fantastic to see both those teams with some pace, because I seem to recall after testing, in one of the testing streams, or during the testing streams, we were questioning Racing Point's pace. We weren't really sure if it was there. Okay, Perez had picked up an 8th place and Lance Stroll had got some points. We weren't sure where they were. Come to Baku, Perez comfortably best of the rest, really. Lance Stroll makes his way back up to 9th place. I really wish he would nail his Saturdays, because he would be so much closer to Perez if he did, because he can clearly race on a Sunday. And then you've got McLaren as well, who at the moment, I think in the championship are best of the rest and may well even be best of the rest, because Norris is about as consistent as they need him to be, and Carlos Sainz has shown, and finally getting across the line today, that he can deliver. So I'm really swinging this around from what's been a bit of a meh stream so far to brilliant. Great to see those two in that midfield fight. And if Renault can get their act together and Alfa Romeo can continue, it's just as close, if not closer, than we thought it was going to be. Very happy for both them teams today.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think Perez had a really great weekend, and that's got to have put some energy into the Racing Point team, who up to this point, it's been kind of really unsure where they stand. I think, if you look down that kind of the midfield teams that are fighting with each other, that kind of what we call it the battle for 4th place kind of teams, the Racing Point, McLaren, Haas kind of teams. They've had a very strange start to the season where they've sort of not been completely there and had some difficulties. So it's really good that Perez had good qualifying, good race, got some solid points, and he's actually ahead of Gasly in the championship, I think. I think Lance Stroll having bad Saturdays might be saving him, because it's keeping those 2 Racing Points apart from each other in the race. And as we know, Perez is magnetically attracted to the other pink car. And finally, 2 McLarens in the points. Carlos Sainz, I think, had a splendid race. Not such a great Saturday, but a really, really good race. And they must be happy as well. It's just 1 race out of 21, but they must also be feeling more positive going forwards. They've had a sort of vaguely tricky start as well, but so have a lot of teams, really. I think Mercedes are the only ones who are going around patting themselves on the back. Everyone else has got some kind of problem to deal with.
It's a little bit like, I don't know how close you follow football, but it's a bit like the Premier League. Nobody wants that 4th place. So that's kind of how the season started. I was going to say a weird one for Norris, bringing him in late on for that under the virtual safety car, but as a team, they weren't going to lose anything. He was obviously going to lose points to his teammate, but as a team, I think it was the right call. It's worth the gamble, isn't it? They might have been able to get Perez if he could have switched those tyres on, but turns out that Perez was just able to switch his on after the virtual safety car and all was good. So worth the gamble, but Yeah, they weren't going to lose anything, were they, as a team?
No, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't too much of a hit, and they learned something, um, and lost nothing. So yeah, why not? And I think these drivers kind of like to go for something exciting if they're able to. If your pit guy comes onto the radio and says, "We're going to try pitting you, so you can just put your foot down and try and take it to the guys in front," I'm sure they'd say, "Yeah, let's do it."
I'm going to rewind. I'm going to rewind
Okay.
2 weeks to China. And I sat in this room and chat were going crazy. Social media was going mad. What a drive from Alex Albon. Pit lane to points. Absolutely fantastic. Drive of his career. Deserves a hell of a lot of credit. Should he be in that Red Bull replacing Gasly? Wow, what a performance. Driver of the day comfortably. Kimi Raikkonen today. Pit lane to points. Not driver of the day. Nobody's mentioned him. What the hell? How is he not driver of the day? Pit lane to points.
I think we just quietly expect Raikkonen to get on with it and sneak into the points no matter where he starts, don't we? I mean, he's always just there. I think it's Alfa Romeo's really working out for him. He's just quietly enjoying having a fight in the midfield and bringing home a couple of points, which is all people could expect of him. But yeah, I think he had a really good race, quite an anonymous race. We didn't really see him. Crofty mistook Giovinazzi for him a couple of times, but I'm not sure how much we actually looked at Kimi himself. And again, maybe that's something about the race worth discussing as well, is that there was quite a lot going on in the midfield that we never actually saw, which is unusual for sort of the last couple of years of F1. But yeah, I think he'll definitely be a contender for driver of the day when you pop the question later on.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about the TV too much at the moment because I want to do that later as well. But we did have it in China as well, didn't we? We missed a lot of midfield action. There were some retirements, which obviously helped Kimi Raikkonen out, but only 4, and that's only one more than in China. So Albon benefited from that as well. So I think Kimi definitely deserves a shout. But like I said, we'll get to driver a day in a bit. But I think maybe he is a what's the phrase I'm looking for? A bit of a victim of what we've come to expect from him. You sort of look, Kimi got pit lane to points. Well, obviously. So it's not really, in that respect, maybe not a surprise, but I think he deserves a lot more recognition. But absolutely, I mean, there's quite a few candidates for driver of the day, which we will get to. I promise we will do driver of the day because I don't agree with the official one at all. But yeah, I think some really good drives in that top 10. Renault.
Oh boy.
What on earth is going on at Renault? You've got a team that came into... People sat there predicting, they'll get Red Bull. Red Bull will struggle with Honda. Renault third best. At worst, they'll be fourth. They've got 2 of the best drivers in terms of consistency on the grid in Ricciardo and Hülkenberg. Their testing pace looked good. What is going on? They had no pace in qualifying. And then Daniel Ricciardo, like an absolute plum, decides to, 1, throw it on the inside of Daniel Kvyat, which is never the bravest move, lock up, effectively run him out of road, so Kvyat has to get out of it and just drop into the escape road to sort of avoid an accident. And then Daniel Ricciardo clearly doesn't check his mirrors and reverses right into the torpedo. I mean, what on earth?
Yeah, I mean, if there's an award for plonker of the race, I'm afraid Ricciardo would have to take it. And I hate to say it because I really like Ricciardo, but I can't say his whole race was awful, but that 1 minute of track time was just a mess. It's very unlike him to be so badly judged on the brakes for a start, but his mistake there led to both of those cars having to take to the escape road, and then just driving straight in. I was mind blown. Again, I haven't heard from him. I haven't heard anything out of him yet, and I know the mirrors are quite tricky to see out of, but the car was completely across the back of him, so I'm sure he should have seen some of it. And again, if you're reversing onto the racetrack, you normally do make sure you know what's going on behind you, even if you don't think there's a car behind you. You just sort of get some kind of pointer that you're not going to reverse into another car. Wow, what as you said, a plum.
I've got, I don't know why it would plum, it's that or swear. I did see some stuff afterwards. I think it was Kai Abel. I think Daniel Kvyat was talking to, and Daniel Ricciardo, I couldn't hear any audio, but Daniel Ricciardo went over in the pen, put his hand on Kvyat's shoulder, looked to apologise, then held his hand up to the camera and sort of, my fault, my bad, walked away. And I think that's a good thing to do. That's quite class, to be fair. I have to give him that. But I've seen in chat people saying he couldn't see out of his mirror as well. Then the FIA need to be looking into this, because if you can't, as a stationary car, if you can't see another stationary car which is side on behind you, then either one, those mirrors are illegal, two, the mirrors don't have any mirror in them, or three, Daniel Ricciardo needs an eyesight test. It's as simple as that, because I just, like I say, moron. Absolute moron is what I said in the watch along. And do you know what? I'll be honest, maybe I'm wrong, but I think if anyone said to Daniel Ricciardo, "Were you a moron?" he would probably go, "Yes, I was." He's that kind of guy, isn't he? But Renault just nowhere. They seem to have good pace in China, and prior to that, I think Daniel Ricciardo was racing well. Was he in the points, or certainly fighting for the points at that point with Kvyat? That was a lot of points. But yeah, I think he was having a good race. He was delivering on race pace, but just a really weird weekend. Hulkenberg out in Q1. Daniel Ricciardo, I was watching the replays yesterday, by 3 frames, made it across the line to get that lap in before the red flag to get out of Q1. Something's not right.
They're not having the best of time. And, as you sort of said it off the top, we came into this year expecting big things of them. Renault are the kind of team that have this program to make iterative steps each year, and they've got, the manufacturer resources behind them to do that. And clearly they've made a car that's on a bit of a knife edge this year. Getting the car tuned into each track, not as easy for them as some of the cars around them. So this weekend, having a tricky time. Maybe next weekend will be better. This Baku has been kind of strange this weekend. The tyres are clearly very affected by temperature, and the track goes in and out of shade quite regularly, and it's been kind of weird to predict where the tyres are going to be at any given point. So depending on how sensitive your car is, you can sort of be there, not be there, and Renault clearly weren't there. But they've got a lot of work to do going forwards to be consistent. I think that's what you need. If you're going to, whether you're at the top or in the midfield, if you're going to fight for those positions in the Constructors' Championship, you need to be able to deliver points consistently over your rivals, and Renault absolutely are not. I mean, part of the reason Ricciardo left Red Bull was because he was finishing the race, and he's finished a race once so far, for various different reasons. Today, completely his own fault, but he wants to get points on the board. That's what he wants to do, and it's not happening for him. And Hulkenberg as well.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some concern at the very top of Renault in Paris. I can see there being some worries there, and I wouldn't be surprised. Obviously, again, maybe another team that have got a lot of hope for Spain with some upgrades, but if these upgrades don't work in Spain, I wonder if maybe some chief executives or some directors on the board might start to want some heads to roll. Because I'm worried for Renault. I don't want to get too much into that. Maybe that's a conversation for a future thing that we have planned, or a future video. But yeah, I'm worried for them. Really worried. And actually, while we're on Kvyat and Toro Rosso, really disappointed for them, because in practice, the little practice we got, and in qualifying, that car looked seriously quick, that Toro Rosso, and I thought they were on for being best of the rest this weekend, and it just didn't really convert to race pace. And obviously Kvyat was unfortunate with what happened with Ricciardo, and Albon, all right, 2.6 seconds off a point, but not really. I honestly thought that where McLaren were is where we'd have seen Toro Rosso today.
Yeah, very strange for them, and ended up being, if not for fighting with Ricciardo, slightly anonymous this weekend. Only points available for the top 10, and not everyone can fit in there. And as we mentioned, Racing Point and McLaren had a really good race, and Kimi obviously got in the points. But yeah, big shame for Albon, but he got close enough, I think. And I think a lot of eyes will be looking at him this year. I think he's already starting to show himself to be someone worthy of moving up the teams in the next few years. But yeah, it does, like Toro Rosso and I mean, normally you'd say Alfa Romeo, but they've been quite consistent under Raikkonen. But Taurus are the kind of team where they're not going to be there every weekend. And when they do look like they've found a way to be at one with the track, they do want to definitely get those points where they can. And at the beginning of the weekend, we thought this was going to be one of their weeks, and no points for them. It'd be interesting to see where Kvyat could have ended up, but I probably don't think he would have got a point either. Big shame for them.
Just finally on the Ricciardo incident, it is a 3-place grid drop for Spain, but Ricciardo said, I'm going to read this, as soon as I went down this skate road, it was a sense of urgency and a bit of panic, I guess, and just trying to minimise damage and lose as little time as possible. I found reverse and started going and had no idea he was there. I guess the urgency stopped me from looking. He didn't even look. So all of those saying that he couldn't see, well, he couldn't see because he didn't look. I mean, wow, that is... Well, there we go. We'll move on, but that's...
That's interesting and telling. That's a big error from him, isn't it? I mean, we hardly ever see these cars in reverse, and there are quite strict rules about using reverse. Like, you're not really meant to do it on the track, as you know, you're not meant to go in the wrong direction on the track, and they're not really that easy to operate in reverse. So, you know, normally when you are reversing, you do it carefully, but not today, I guess.
No, that's you say we don't see much reverse. That's all we've seen all weekend, really, isn't it? It's people in escape roads and reversing, and some 257-point turns in F2, which was quite an interesting one. Oh, how has he got a seat? Let's not get into F2, but yeah, surprised because obviously this is another thing actually, and I kind of made this point about Vettel in Bahrain. Ricardo's got a tailor-made excuse there. The mirrors are too small, I couldn't see. Vettel had a tailor-made excuse in Bahrain. It was windy. The wind caught me out. Leclerc could have blamed the tyres on Saturday, but actually we are getting quite a bit of honesty from drivers this year, because Sebastian Vettel said it wasn't the wind, he made the mistake in Bahrain. Leclerc said it was his mistake in qualifying, and Ricciardo saying I didn't look. So it's good to see a bit of honesty, because usually drivers like to use an excuse or two, but yeah, we'll not get too much into that. But one team that could do with some excuses are Haas.
Haas at this race?
Yeah, like really nowhere. A bit like Renault, but Saturdays have been Haas's thing. They've made it into Q3, I think, with both cars every race this season. Then they get to Baku and they're just, again, like Renault, just nowhere, no pace. And then I thought, well, maybe they've sorted their Sunday problems out, and that's had a detrimental effect on their Saturdays. And then they've got into Sunday and also had no pace. I think Magnussen stopped twice. I might be wrong, but I think he did. Yes, he did. He pitted late under that virtual safety car, I think, but just no pace for him. Grosjean retiring as well, so kind of, I think they're in a better position than they were last year because of the points they've picked up. But when you look at Romain Grosjean, it's kind of mirrored last year. That's 4 races, 0 points. A weird one, and I think we said this last week, actually. The one thing that seems to be letting Renault off is that Haas can't seem to deliver when they need to.
This is kind of the thing I've been sort of talking about, is that none of these midfield teams have been able to string together a good 4 races on the trot. They're having problems up and down the field. We expected Haas to be more consistent and start getting the points in and maybe deliver on the potential that they mucked up last season, because they had a very bad start to the season last year, even though they definitely had the potential to score lots of points. And it's kind of hard to know what their potential is this year, because they're just dropping back in the races. You're right. It's all Saturday work and then no Sunday work. And this weekend it's kind of nothing. It's kind of weird. But maybe we're going to see a lot of sensitivity in these teams and sort of things swinging back and forth. And maybe Haas will have a really good Spain, and then maybe Toro Rosso will have a good Monaco or something. It's very hard to predict where these teams are going to be race on race. I hate to say it, there are certain people who have certain opinions about this driver, but I think we're getting to the end of Romain Grosjean now. I think I don't know how I feel about Magnussen yet. Again, we're not seeing that much of him this year, but I think maybe we need some fresh blood in that team and some more energy, because we're not seeing really much of them right now, are we?
I was just going to ask that actually about Grosjean or about the team's driver lineup future, where they need to freshen things up a bit. But the thing is, even Dan, I remember doing some pre-season stuff with him, and he said in a stream that even he was surprised that Grosjean kept his seat. So even the biggest Grosjean fanboys think it's time for him maybe to move on, which would be a shame. I know I give him a hard time. I give him a hard time because it annoys Dan. But he's a good guy. I know he was a bit of an idiot when he was younger in Formula 1, made way too many mistakes, was just stupid and reckless, but he matured. I think he's done a good job, but maybe it is time. And he is one of those that I'd be quite sad to see go in some respects because he's been around a while now. I think back to, I'm on a Grosjean reminisce. Oh, this is terrible. I go back to India a few years ago with Kimi Raikkonen and the team telling Raikkonen to get out of the flipping way. Shift your backside, sir. This is not good enough. I think back to then, and Grosjean was giving Kimi a run for his money. So the talent was there, but maybe that's just it for Grosjean. A shame that he's not got any points. It would be nice to see him pick up some. I'm not going to go slating him for that just yet, because last year I was slating him and he went on and had a very good second half of the season, and 4th place in Austria was one of his results. And yeah, I think feel for him. I don't think it's all he's doing. It looked like was it a mechanical issue today, Stuart? I'm trying to think. I don't think he didn't hit anybody, did he? I know he went straight on at one point, but
yeah, I think it was mechanical. And then he saw the virtual safety car and retired because he knows safety cars in Baku don't do him very well. So he ran. And we've, of course, with all this talk, we've got to remember we've only had 4 races.
Yeah.
And these are the technically the flyaway races, even though Baku is sort of Europe. And a lot can change. That middle part of the season, the European core part of the season, is when we sort of see the true patterns of what's going to happen. So, I mean, it's going to be very hard to catch people like Mercedes, but this whole midfield can change really, really quickly if certain teams get their act together. So, Haas have had a bad start to the season, but they might have a really good middle. They had a really good middle last year.
Absolutely. And that goes for a number of drivers as well. Gasly, Giovinazzi, who, all right, got a penalty but did out-qualify Raikkonen on Saturday. Stroll, a number of drivers that people are piling the pressure on. Has only been 4 races. Give them a chance. It can easily turn around. But I do wonder if Grosjean's one of those that might miss out at the end of the year. Williams.
Over there.
Yeah,
they were like 12th and 13th at one point.
Yeah, they came for the weekend. 15th,
they had a very
16th.
expensive weekend.
Oh, gee, yeah. And if any team on the grid did not need that, it was Williams. And I'll tell you what, seeing as really their race wasn't anything... I'll tell you what their race was. It was consistent. Williams did exactly what I expected them to do. There we go. They were last and 2 laps down. But what else can you say about them?
It's utterly tragic.
It is.
To be honest, I don't know. We've come to accept it now that they'll be last. Like, even last season, they had a really bad year, but they weren't this last. But they are so last right now. They are in a different category of motorsport. God, and I really hope they can figure out some plan for 2020, because this can't go on. But there's really not much you can say about them, other than Kubica also made an error and drove into the wall. That happened. George Russell drove as fast as he could, which was as good enough for second to last.
Can you imagine that conversation? You've just had FP1. It's cancelled. Cracked chassis on Russell's car. They're struggling for spares. You get to qualifying. Right, Robert. Just go out there, mate. Pop a lap in. Please do not damage this car. Oh, Christ. Straight into the wall. I mean, we see it all the time, don't we, at that corner. Particularly, like you said, in F2, things in there happen all the time. But I don't know. A horrible weekend for them. Absolutely. FP1, apparently that drain was inches away from entering Russell's cockpit, wasn't it? Underneath.
Yeah, Russell did say, a few inches either way, and it would have been much, much worse for him. So thank goodness that didn't happen. I got a feel for Russell. I really hope he has at least a couple of races where people can sort of see that he's doing something well, because he could be having magnificent races and we just can't tell. He could be pushing that car to its limits and we just have no idea.
Russell said 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, when questioned about this, he said that the people that know know I'm doing a good job. So obviously Williams and Mercedes are going to have the data, aren't they, is what he's doing. So they're going to know if he's doing a good job. But from the outside, it doesn't look like it because he was 15th again. But I think he's doing all he can in that car. And I think the same as Kubica. No, there are some question marks. I'm not sure. I've not really looked into it, to be honest, because there are, with all due respect to Williams, and I do mean this with all due respect to Williams, there are bigger things going on throughout the field for us to focus on, but I will have a look at it at some point. But there's some talk that Kubica hasn't got equal machinery, and not like they're prioritising Russell, but they just have had a problem with building his car. I don't know. There's some stuff out there about as to why Kubica's not quite on the pace of Russell, but it must be. I mean, they're doing a job that millions of people would absolutely do anything to have, but it must be quite disheartening from any driver's perspective to turn up to a weekend knowing that if the entire field finishes, you're probably going to be 19th at best. That's got to be quite, going into a weekend. Especially somebody of Kubica's experience. Somebody like Russell, at least he's got youth on his side and he can go, hey, I'm coming in to prove my point to get a seat further up the grid, whereas Kubica's like, this is probably it for me. Sad, really, actually, when I put it like that. I've just depressed myself now. It
is sad, and if I were Williams, I'd find some way of framing the weekend in a slightly more active way, I guess. They know they're going to be last on the grid, last in the race, bar retirement. So they need to sort of, I don't know, create some goalposts, talk about viewing the race as a way to develop the car, just something to keep them motivated and active. I mean, clearly Kubica's going for it. I mean, he knows he's either going to be last or second to last on the grid, but he clearly pushed it in Q1 despite competing with next to nobody. Because you really don't have to push it in Q1 if you're Williams, but he did. There's not really much you could say about Williams, but I hope something happens during the course of this season that at least shows they are able to move this car in some kind of direction and build to something, because it's just looking very hopeless for them right now, and I hate that. I really do hate that, because we don't want Williams to be this bad. We certainly don't want Williams to feel like they're on the brink of dropping out, which I think they would do as a very last resort. But not great.
I want to talk about Friday and F1 TV in a minute, but I think we'll round off going through the field. If you're new to the channel, by the way, first of all, welcome, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and do please drop a like on the video. It helps the channel out massively. It only takes a second, so that would be awesome if you could do that. But yes, I think if you are new, there is a proper debrief that goes up tomorrow while I'll get some reaction from the drivers and read a few quotes out and kind of go through each team. This is just a reaction to what we've seen, which wasn't an awful lot, and we've still managed to talk for an hour. We did very well as a China. We've done even better this week, but I suppose to round it off, chat, if you want to let me know with a surname, who's the driver of the day, Stuart? Who's your driver of the day?
For the first time, I did actually think about this ahead of time. Again, very tricky because we didn't really see a lot of everyone. But I think I'm going to go for Sainz. I think he had a solid drive, and he had the drive that we've been waiting for him to have for all season. He beat Norris despite starting behind him. I think solid, good drive, finished just behind Perez. He didn't do anything like crazy spectacular, but he was there and willing and able. It was a tricky one. It was tricky to pick someone out.
Yeah, certainly not Leclerc. Nothing against him. I'm not going to start hating on Leclerc, but he was not driver of the day at all. I think Perez is a good shout. A lot of people in chat are saying that one. I think Bottas as well. We've got to give him a mention because he was strong all day. Was nice and aggressive with his teammate when he needed to be at the start, and delivered the win and Bottas redemption as well after last year. Nice cheesy line there.
And again, Kimi, as you mentioned, strong race.
I'm really struggling not to say Kimi because of the fuss over Albon in China, but then you make an excellent point that, well, that's kind of what you expect from Kimi Räikkönen, and there were retirements and things helped him out, of course, but he's got to be on that list. But I liked it. I didn't even consider Sainz. How bad is that? I think that's a really good shout from Stuart, but I think Perez or Räikkönen for me. But again, actually, to be honest, 6, so Perez, Sainz, Norris, Stroll, and Räikkönen, I think all deserve a mention for driver of the day, as well as Bottas. Because Stroll did get to 9th.
I think there's I think all 5 of those drivers will go home happy, or Kimi will at least go home placid.
Or
Yeah, I think
drunk.
I think they're going to feel like they got the most out of this weekend. Norris might think, oh, maybe he could have got 7th, not 8th, but other than that, I think they should be very happy with themselves. Absolutely.
Somebody's asking, we've got some no super chats at the moment to read out, so yes. Let's we'll round this off by looking back over the weekend. Weirdly, as a whole, Friday. What was that about? I mean, you've got the drain cover comes up, Leclerc hits it and it comes up. Russell's car then gets destroyed by that one. Very lucky in the end, as it turns out. They then get the car onto a recovery truck, which then hits a bridge. Oh my God.
Yeah.
We lose FP1 as a whole. You've got FP2 when drivers are like, right, and teams are going, right, we need to get the laps on the board. 3 red flags at least, possibly more, which restricted running. You've then got the F2 where, I think the only session we had that was clean was FP3 and Q3 were the only sessions in Formula 1 over the weekend that were completely clean. Even the race got a virtual safety car. And then you've got F2 where drivers just, I don't know, like to hit each other for some reason. It's close racing. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's close racing. And I guess that I want to come to a point on marshals, but I don't want to attack marshals because I said this in the watch along. The thing is, without marshals, they can't go racing. And they all do a fantastic job all weekend. But they were not good this weekend in Formula 1 or Formula 2. How long did it take to clear those 3 cars in F2 in the sprint race? That was ridiculous.
Yeah, F2 was a joke. I was, as some of you may know, I've been watching F2 properly for the first time this year and been enjoying it. And obviously there's a bit more incident than there is in F1 and more likely to have safety car periods and stuff. But I didn't count it up, but it did feel like we had more laps behind the safety car in the sprint race because they were so slow at clearing the cars. And I absolutely agree with you. I don't want to come down hard on marshals, but you need to. There's a lot of things in Formula 1, including F1 TV, that I think come under the sort of umbrella of if you are running the elite motorsport series in the world, you need to get everything right. Put your best people on it. Train the marshals by people who've been marshalling for years. Get the European race marshals in to train up your Baku race marshals. Look at the people in Monaco. Look how quick they are, even though there's like hardly any space there. Just get people in trained. Make sure you don't drive trucks under low bridges. Just get, especially like that feature, the sprint race in F2, which was time limited to 45 minutes. You've got to get things out of the way. So a little bit shambolic. I'm assuming FOM, the FIA, people who work with the marshals and the race organisers and all the people who work around the track probably come in ahead of next year and to get some better systems in order to get things moving more quickly, because it was a bit of a shambles. And particularly, in Formula 2, we were robbed of quite a bit of racing because so much time the race was neutralised. And again, Q2, which was due to finish before the Formula E started at 3:00, actually ended up extending the qualifying right to the other side of Formula E. The Formula E race was finished by the time qualifying was finished. So, yeah, definitely needed more professionalism there.
There were times through the weekend, certainly on Friday, where it did not feel like the pinnacle of motorsport. I have to put it that way. And I know, Baku's a newish race, but it's newish race. But it is their 4th season now, so they should have a rough idea. But don't Singapore, or certainly when Singapore was new on the calendar, I don't know if they still do, but I seem to recall they used to fly marshals out from Monaco to help out because of the way they reacted. So maybe they need to do that next year in Baku. But somebody in chat puts a question across, and I don't really know how to answer it, because I'd like to say yes in one respect because I think he was such a huge part of all of that operation, but no in another respect because people should know what they're doing. But do you think maybe race control missing Charlie Whiting a little bit? New people in there maybe taking on bigger responsibilities and it's just taking a bit of time? Or is this just down to marshals?
I think that's really hard to say. I mean, we know Charlie was doing about 6 jobs, and when he passed, the consensus was there's no one person who's going to replace Charlie. They're going to need several people to they sort of split his job into different areas and get people managing those areas separately. Because essentially Charlie built that role from the ground up and it grew over time, and he was the one who knew everything. I would say, well, I don't think necessarily this is Charlie related. I think they should be enough people who know what are going on in order to, run the race, run the sessions. If it is Charlie related, then the FA have really screwed up big time by putting all their eggs into one basket and having no contingency plan for, even if he retired or even if he fell ill, not being able to turn up to a race. The races have been running to standard, so far this year. They've clearly got people there. So I don't think it necessarily is Charlie, but I do think they need to just make sure that people staffed at the track can run it properly. And the marshals are good. I've got nothing against individual marshals. Like, I think you need sort of management system in place and just a well-organized machine. If you put me out there on the track, and I would do the very best I could, but if I didn't know what I was doing, if I didn't, know who to call, who to speak to, how many people you need to get a race car off the track in 2 minutes, then I would just flounder around and make an ass of myself as well.
Yeah, maybe it's just coincidence. Maybe this would have happened if Charlie had been there. Maybe it's just teething problems, bit of growing pains, as somebody pointing out in chat there. Scott saying leadership equals a plan well executed, growing pains without Mr. Whiting. Maybe that's partly behind it. But in terms of marshals, by the way, the guy with the flag at the start of the race, he was pretty energetic, hopping across the back of the grid, waving the flag in the air. He was quite happy. So, yeah, there you go. But one final thing, it's kind of a moan, I guess. F1 TV, do they need to either start thinking about refunding some people a few months' worth of their subscription, or maybe make it free until they can flipping well sort it out? Because this is at least the second weekend in a row where they've had issues, and I think people lost qualifying and lost the race today. I mean, this is supposed to be a premium service from the pinnacle of motorsport that is now owned by a media company who were absolutely determined to get this over the top streaming service in place, and it's clearly not ready to be used by everybody. It clearly can't handle the traffic. Not good enough.
It's really not good enough, is it? Yeah, I definitely saw reports of people during qualifying and during the race, which are the prime sessions in F1, that they lost their stream, and that's been happening all this year, all last year as well. And again, this is the world premiere motorsport series, and people are paying not insignificant amounts to watch it. So I'd definitely be thinking about refunds. They're not getting what they pay for, and live sport is not something you want to be cutting out on you. It's one thing if sort of Netflix goes down; it's a pain. But
I don't know.
But if you end up like losing Netflix for like 15 minutes, then you can just make a cup of tea and pick up where you left off. But if you lose 15 minutes of a live sport, then that's a huge blow, especially when it's so tightly controlled over how you can watch it. I mean, you get streams taken down for even suggesting you're talking about F1. So I could see why people are kind of turning to illegal streams rather than signing up to F1 TV, even if they have the opportunity to.
Yeah. A couple of people in chat saying that theirs ran fine. I think that's the case. It's always the case with these online streaming services. Some people, there's no issues. Others just suffer, but they've got to sort it. It's not good enough. You make a great point. Just imagine for a second that we have to, let's say Sky lost the rights and the only way we could watch it was F1 TV, and we're watching and we get a race like Baku or China where not a lot of action happens, and then it cuts out for 15 minutes and it turns out that the best action in that race was in that 15 minutes that you've not been able to watch. You're going to be cross. You're going to be a little bit miffed, and I think they need to sort something out. I don't know. I mean, apparently, I'm just looking at chat now. Somebody said a moment ago that some people were getting refunds, which is good. that they're willing to do that. But I just wonder if they need to either make it cheaper and say, look, this is only the second year, there could be teething problems, please be aware, or even make it free in some regions to test it. I mean, I'll cut them slack for last year because it was their first year running it, but this is a company it's a media company, Stuart. You'd think if there's one thing they could get right, it's an online streaming service. But what we also, I guess, we have to remember is that this is all brand spanking new to Formula One, and it's a sport that only really found out the internet existed just after Bernie left. So,
I mean, you hit all the nails on the head there, really. I mean, I would be willing to give them more slack for sort of having teething problems, even in their second year, potentially, if they presented it as a sort of a beta, maybe having limited sign-ups, having low-cost subscriptions for the first couple of years while they sort of roll it out and expand the operation. If they did it in that way, but they didn't. They've presented it as watch every session live through this exclusive app, and we've got everything you could need, and we're the best sport ever. And it keeps not working. Then that's not good enough. And maybe they needed to be a bit more humble about it and say it was a beta and keep it low cost and show that it works. And if it failed a couple of times, then they've already sort of said up front it's a work in progress.
Yeah, no, I agree. Maybe even should have rolled it out to a couple of countries first, seen how that got on for a year, and then maybe rolled it out a bit further after that. But I think they were spooked by the deals that Bernie did with pay TV. They realised there were a lot of countries about to lose the sport, so maybe they had to rush it out. Maybe, I mean, I'm not making excuses for them, but I'm just wondering if there's a reason behind it. Hopefully, it'll all get sorted. But if you couple that with, I still think we missed a lot of action today. I don't think it would have been an amazing race if we'd watched the entire midfield, but I think we missed some action in that midfield. We definitely missed a hell of a lot in China from TV direction. If you put all that together, it's not been a particularly successful couple of races from a TV perspective in F1, and it needs to be sorted. It has got to be sorted because people are paying for F1 TV, and you say there about not insignificant amounts. I see people all the time going, "Oh, it's only £12 a month." It's all relative. £12 a month to some people is a hell of a lot of money to spend on a sport that used to be basically free to air. Obviously, in the UK, you have the TV license, but you know what I mean. Whereas £12 to somebody else is peanuts. So it's all relative. And Sky is upwards of, I think it's £10 a month, I think, for just Sky F1, but then you had to have the basic package, which I think was another, so I think it was upwards of £25 a month, maybe even more. That's not a small amount of money to some people for a sport that once upon a time was basically free. So it's got to be sorted. It's got to be sorted, especially if they're trying to attract new fans. If you want to bring in a younger audience and you have a service that they know is going down every other session or is going down and they're missing the races, they're not going to sign up, and in which case you're not going to get your younger fans in. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's a shame because you get the impression with a lot of the graphics, the thing they've added to the broadcast, that they're trying to make it more attractive and more interesting. And we have noted in the past, like over the past couple of years, they've been noticing that the midfield exists and trying to follow battles as they develop, away from the lead. Because, since 2014, the lead has not been as interesting as the rest of the race. And we've applauded them for noticing that there are other cars in the race where interesting things are happening and stories develop during the year. But last couple of races, not quite showing their strengths. So I don't know if they've got new people in charge or if they just need to kind of step back and reevaluate things. It's really hard to interact with them as well. Like, I have no sense of being able to tell them anything. I don't. It feels weird that I feel like I should be able to, but I feel like I don't know if they have any sense of what the fans are thinking.
I do want to answer this because it will come up in the comment section, because it does every time I mention this. But £32 for Sky is much more than just F1, though. Absolutely spot on. But the point I'm making is that if you are getting Sky because you just want to watch F1, I still think you should just be able to pay Sky £10 a month for one channel. If that's the channel you want, that's what you should get. But I suppose from a cost-effective point of view, they're not going to come and install a satellite dish and whatnot for £10, are they, a month? But I understand the point. You do get more for your money at £32, but if you only want Sky because of the F1, then it's a lot of money to spend on what is... Because I would argue that I only watch... Let's get a bit personal now. I only really watch Comedy Central and Formula One and then the football. So football's expensive. Formula One's costing money now, so I don't mind paying that personally. But for some people, it might be that they just go, I want F1, and what else am I getting for money? I'll look Friends repeats all day for £32. Get Netflix, it's cheaper. But
and I guess you've got Now TV, but that's more than £10 a month, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like £10 a race weekend or something, isn't it? It's quite expensive Now TV if you just want to watch the races on demand.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the F1 TV thing, Liberty are doing the right thing. They're going in the right direction, but they need to make sure it works, is I guess the point I want to make. We're going to leave it there, Stuart, because I didn't realise it's 5:20. And that was apparently, in some people's eyes, a boring race, and we still managed to waffle for an hour and 20 minutes. That's ridiculous. Thank you very much for coming along. Wasn't the best. Hopefully we'll get better in Spain and Monaco. Fingers crossed, although I am concerned because China wasn't great. Today was all right. Spain generally is not great, and Monaco can be not great, and Canada was pretty shocking last year. I really hope that doesn't continue, because we could have been on a run of 5 or 6 crap races, mate. Not good enough. But thank you anyway for coming along and waffling for an hour and 20 minutes with me.
Absolutely no problem. Yeah, I know Spain and Monaco are risky races in terms of excitement, but not always. Not always. We can have some surprises there. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'll chat to you soon.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. And I'll talk to you shortly. Definitely, but yes.
Cheers.
Lovely. Just making sure I've silenced the right thing there and not me. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. Thank you to Stuart, as always, of course. Sorry it's gone on a little bit, but I don't stream very often these days, so I like to just waffle at you guys a little bit. I get lonely. I don't really. Right, so, yes, I will be back tomorrow at somewhere between 4 or 5 o'clock UK time with the debrief. There could be some changes. I've got a lot of, if you follow me on personal Twitter, I'm not going to do it here, don't worry, but if you follow me on my personal Twitter, you'll know that there's some stuff that I need to sort out, so there might be some changes coming up, but I will let you all know. If I have to do a video to let you know, I will, but I'll try not to, because I know that just feels like a money grab sometimes when people do videos just to go, I'm going to change something. Individual channels can do what they want, I guess, but if I could do it in a post, I will let you know on Twitter. So make sure you do follow me over on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.